Today, we're talking about the difficulties in finding a chiropractor, PT, massage therapist, what have you, and the problems that we have within our profession, as well as some of the problems that coaches have in dealing with injuries. So we're going to start on our end of the equation with the manual therapy side. Now, this can be a PT, it can be a chiro, that's fine, whatever. We're just going to lump them all in together. People that use their hands on people to get people out of pain. So the first problem that we're going to talk about is the schooling that they receive, right? Not a lot of you guys know unless you've been through it, but really when you go through school, you have a lot of education, right? It's a doctorate level degree for the vast majority of PTs. All chiropractors are doctors. So there's a lot of anatomy and neuroscience and all that good stuff, technique, blah, blah, blah. But really school is aimed at two things: teaching you how to not hurt people, because first, do no harm, and second, to get through boards. That's what a lot of schools will use as their marketing tool. Is we have a 95% pass rate on boards, right? If you come here, you'll be able to practice. So really not a whole lot of time is actually spent on teaching doctors how to get people well. And again, this will vary on the school that you go to, but all in all, that's what's going on. You come out of school and you're like, great, I'm going to save the world, and you get a patient in front of you and you're like, yeah, I don't really know how to manage this. So that's first thing. The second thing is that there's a lot of opinions out there, right? Same person can go to 10 different chiropractors and probably hear 8 different stories as to why they're in pain, right? There's just a lot of different lines of thinking out there, and it's not for me to sit here and say which one's right and which one's wrong, but just so that you, the coaches and the athletes out there listening to this, know this stuff, that yeah, there's just a lot of different schools of philosophy, right? In medicine, there's less schools of thought, right? It's just, this is biochemistry, this is what's going on, we're going to give you this pill, or we're going to do this thing to you. And there's a little bit of gray area in there. But in the PT and chiro world, you're going to see a lot of different variety, which is going to lead to a lot of different treatment and a lot of different outcomes. So to me, that's not a good thing. Some people will say, oh, that's great. You can go to different people and get different things. I don't like that, right? That just makes people mistrust chiropractors and PTs because we can't even agree amongst ourselves, and that's a problem. Now from there, right, if you just go to a random physical therapist or a chiropractor and you're an athlete and you're someone who trains, this person may or may not be able to relate to you, right? You guys who are listening to this probably find it very important to be able to squat, to be able to clean, to be able to run. That is very near and dear to your heart. You want to move, right? That is something you want to do. It's something that you need to do. Now this PT or chiro that you're going to go to may or may not relate to that. They're going to say, oh, I hurt my back deadlifting. And be like, well, you should never deadlift again. And that's just wrong, right? That to me is malpractice in a certain sense, right? That's just them not understanding what you're going through on a daily basis and how it happens. You can go to, I'm sure this has happened to some people that are listening right now, that you've gone to the chiropractor or the PT and they're like, you shouldn't squat below 90. You shouldn't deadlift. It's bad for your back. And that's bull, right? Maybe doing it at a very, very high intensity, very heavy relative to you isn't going to be healthy for your back. But deadlifting and squatting in general is not a bad thing for your back. Just the dosage is the problem, not the actual exercise. And they're not going to understand that. And they're just going to have this exclusionary mentality and say, no, just come here for adjustments and never lift anything off the ground again, right? And that'll work until you have to help somebody move, or you pick your child up off the ground and you hurt yourself again. And then they've really failed to do their job. All right. The next thing is contact time, right? We live in a health insurance world. They are dictating a lot of what we do. And so a lot of us, we go into school, and we go into school for the main reason is to help people get better. I believe that in the vast majority of people, PTs and chiropractors that I talk to, that is why they get involved in school. And they tell us that the money is pretty good too. So let's not kid ourselves. It is a little bit about money. What they don't tell you is the economics of the whole thing, right? You have to go, I had a 4-year degree from Ithaca College first, right? So that's a nice chunk of change. Then you go into chiropractic school, which is also very expensive, and there's no scholarships involved. There's nothing like that. So really, you're going to bury yourself in debt, and now you're going to be thrown out there knowing how not to hurt people, right? Knowing that you've passed boards, but not knowing how to get people better, not knowing how to run a business, not understanding how the health industry works, right? And so a lot of people get frustrated with the typical chiropractic visit is 5 minutes long because it's all they do is they crack you and get out of there. And the reason why they do that is because the tail's wagging the dog. The health insurance company is saying, okay, we're only going to pay you this for your treatment, right? We just ran into a problem here in New York where they're saying, okay, before it was like you'd line item what you do, and for each item you would get reimbursed a certain rate, right? So we spend more time with our patients, so we might make, $100, $150 per patient visit, where the guy who only does 2 or 3 things, they're only making 40. Well, guess what they decided to do? They decided to say, hey, no matter what you do, we're going to give you 68 bucks. So that effectively decreased us and increased the guy who's spending 5 minutes with their patients. So that's a little kick in the butt too. So that's why contact time is so low with the PT, with the chiropractor. It's because to make the economics work, to keep a roof over your head, to keep your practice open, you need to be rolling quickly in order to do that. And that's a major complaint about both professions. So now you're going to understand why, right? So these are a lot of the problems that we have internally as chiropractors or as physical therapists. The fifth thing that I didn't put up here is that a lot of people tend to confuse them, right? So we talked about before, not every PT or chiropractor is created the same, right? Massage therapists are not the same as a PT or chiro. Not to knock them, there's a vast amount of massage therapists that do great work and help a lot of people, but they don't have the education behind it to really get down to a lot of dysfunction. They haven't gone through the doctorate level stuff. I don't know if they understand inflammation. I don't know if they understand neurology. I don't know if they understand when to refer out or not. And in my experience, that's what we get a lot of. Oh, my massage therapist told me that. Yeah, they don't know that. They're just kind of shooting from the hip. And again, I'm not knocking the massage therapists out there that have gone and taken that, and I'm sure they won't take it that way because they're going to be confident in knowing that they've learned more and they've pushed past that. Because I've said the same thing about chiropractors and PTs too, right? It's just there's people out there that are not furthering their education once they get out of school, and they tend to lump everybody in together, and that's a problem too, right? Now the coach problems, right? Coach problems when it comes to getting people well is the education, right? You just haven't had it, coaches, right? You haven't spent, 10 semesters studying the human body, having spent 4 semesters working with patients under the tutelage of a doctor. You haven't cut open a body for the vast majority of you, right? So you guys just haven't been versed in what it takes to get a human well, to really understand the physiology, for the most part. That leads to a problem because now there's this quagmire of information out there. There's all these movement gurus, that have taken some things and helped a certain segment of the population and understand, and they've helped that. But now through the use of media, they're out there and they're just kind of spouting off as to, they can help everybody. And if you ever run into anybody that says they can help everybody, they're full of it. Because a lot of the times people end up in pain because of their own selves. So not everybody can help everybody. But you guys are running into this, okay, should I do crossover symmetry? Should I, maybe I'll do K-tape. Maybe I should, look at this. Maybe I should look at that. We need to do bird dogs. There's a ton of it out there. And yeah, it all works in the right situation. I'm not saying that people don't help people. But really, you guys need to understand there's a time and a place for each one of those things. All successful treatment, right, addresses the underlying problem. And not every system out there will get down to the underlying problem. When treatment meets dysfunction, that's when you have success. And it's just with all the information out there, people get bogged down. I mean, I hear of coaches actually putting their hands on clients, and that is just wrong. Like that's legally, that's battery, right? You need to have a license to put your hands on people. So if you're listening right now and you put your hands on people, I highly recommend you stop, go back to school. If that's what you want to do, get a license and then go back out there, because right now you're being reckless. All right? And then the third thing, a lot of the guys I'm talking to right now on the other side of this camera, you guys do group programming. So it's hard to manage a group of 150, 200, 300 people and manage all their health with one general physical program. Not to say that you guys aren't great programmers, it's to say that you can't control everything else that's going on in their life and be able to communicate with that to them all the time, right? Being able to go up to each one of your members and classmates. Did you eat well today? Did you hydrate enough? Are you stressed about something? Blah, blah, blah. The great coaches will understand that stuff and they'll intuitively pick up on that. But the guys that are out there that maybe don't know that, you run into a problem. So all of this puts our athletes dead in the middle between this. And this is the problem that athletes are having. It's, who do I trust? Do I trust my coach? Do I trust my PT? Do I trust my chiro? Nobody knows what's going on. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to create a system that the manual therapist and the coach can get on the same page, that they can have a common language for the betterment of the athlete who has to sit in the middle here, right? Because I wish I had the contact time that a coach had, right? A coach is able to have a lot more in-depth conversation and control their movement a lot more than I can, right? So if I can talk as a manual therapist, if I can say, okay, we have, I've graduated school, I've furthered my education, I've come up or worked with the system, and I've found its results working, right? And we've applied it into an athletic population, and it makes sense. We're able to screen people out, and we're able to say, this is what you need to modify. And if I can, have that relatability and understanding of a training athlete, and be able to talk to that coach and have them understand what they can and can't be doing, right? Now I'm imparting my education on that coach, where they don't need to necessarily understand. I hope that they try and understand as best they can, but I can just say, listen, they shouldn't be squatting these next 2 weeks because of this. And this is what they need to be working on in the meantime, and this is what they can substitute so they don't hurt themselves. Once they clear that, blah, 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 then they can move on, right? We're also cutting down the quagmire of information, right? We're just saying, listen, this works in this setting. Right? It's not anything other than people working with barbells and kettlebells and running and sandbags and all that stuff, right? We're just going to cut through that, and we're going to show you guys how this stuff works, right? And then you're going to be able to, like we said before, kind of have these conversations with your athletes when they are hurt, and just say, okay, within the group programming, if you can't touch your toes today, you're going to do a hang power clean instead of a power clean. Something that simple, right? So when we codify this system between the manual therapist and the coach, really the athlete is the one who wins. The athlete doesn't have to worry about the opinion, because their doctor is also a coach, and they train, so they understand and they're relating to it. Their coach has a manual therapist that they can talk to, that's not talking about these kind of obscure things that don't make sense, or that coaches and manual practitioners are talking about hip flexion and hip extension and knee flexion and knee extension and tissue quality, and that there's an understanding between them that we want the athletes in their training, we want people to get better, we want to increase their capacity so they're not in pain, and that they can play with their grandchildren when they're in their 80s. So these are some of the shortcomings of both sides, and really we need to meet in the middle in order to benefit the athlete as much as possible.